Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the men's grooming. So given the scope of what we've got to do today, it was quite difficult to actually decide on what to present to you. So what I've decided to do is I've decided to take three aspects from the graduate men's program that we've put together and put on at the academy. Now bear in mind that this is aimed at apprentices coming up for their EPAs. It's for newly qualified stylists that are perhaps a little bit unconfident with their men's and especially with their clipper work, and perhaps returnees to the salon that need just a little bit of work working on their clipper work. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Jodie. What I'd like to do today is cover three key aspects. One is the consultation. Two is the balance of a man's haircut, something very, very, very important to me. And thirdly, we're going to run through the hairdresser's fear of the clippers, probably induced by the dreaded fade. Now, if the webinar proves successful and you want to find out a little bit more, we can do lots and lots of things. Type in some things that you'd like us to see, and we may be able to do that from there. I'm guessing the fade would be high on that list. The problem is that I don't know if I could do it justice on an hour on one of my lovely assistants behind me. Perhaps once we get some live models back in, then we might be able to do the fade really, really easily for you. A brief intro to myself. My name is Richard, and I am really old. Now, this basically means that I've got a lot of experience, and that's a lovely, nice way of saying that I've made more mistakes than most of you. In fact, I've probably made the mistakes several times just to make sure that I really do learn from them. One of my favourite quotes is, "Learn from the mistakes of others. There's not enough time to make them all yourself." And the wonderful thing about the Passion for Hair family that Debbie has created here is that we all share and help each other, sometimes from each other's mistakes, but it's an amazing community, and it's a privilege to be part of that, isn't it? Now, during this lockdown, I've been listening to one of my favourite motivational speakers, which is Anthony Robbins. And I was listening to him talking about a system that he had called OPA, which is Outcome, Purpose, Action. And one of the things that he said, and it actually stopped me in my tracks, the dogs wondered what was going on, and I just stopped. And he said, "You want a better outcome, ask better questions." And I suddenly thought, I love that. That's going to be part of how we should be seeing consultations. So let's get on with this. Now, I've been a hairdresser for 37 years this year. I think I've known you for 34 of those. Now, I was taught by a barber who became a fabulous hairdresser, and I think I've inherited his mindset about short hair from him. Dave was an amazingly generous man with his time, with his knowledge, and I believe he is still hairdressing right now, and he's still a great hairdresser. So I like simple. I like clean lines. I like sharp, clean sections. I like short point to short point. I like guidelines. I like shape, but most of all for me, it's about balance. Now, balance is one of those things that comes in from here. It's one of those indescribable things that when you see a haircut, it just works for you. And for me, like that one word would be balance. It doesn't matter whether it's a man's haircut. It doesn't matter whether it's a beautiful chignon. It doesn't matter whether it's the most avant-garde creative piece of work from the likes of, let's say, Robert Lebetta. Now, anyone that's under 30 years old, if you don't know who Robert Lebetta is, Google him. You will thank me for that. Now, I like tidy, which is obviously a play on the word, play on the name, but it's an all-encompassing thing. That's sort of quite how my work generally looks at. So let's start. I'm working through from some notes, if that's okay with some of you guys. I want to make sure that I can deliver what I promised to deliver. Now, let's work on the consultation. What is a consultation? Well, the consultation for me is the difference between a good haircut, a great haircut, and the right haircut. It's the difference between the right haircut and losing a client. It's our core service. It's our superpower. It's the real skill that we possess. So what is a consultation? Well, a consultation is the act of asking and listening and finding out what the client wants and needs from you on that day and for the next 6 to 8 weeks. It's also the communication that we give back to reassure the client that we understand what they're trying to find out from us. So a client arrives and she's got this image. I shouldn't really do that because that looks like that loser thing, doesn't it? She has an image in her head of what she wants to look like when she leaves the salon. It's our job to take that image out of her head and put it into our head. And I believe it's also our job to make sure that we place that image in front of her so that we both know that we're looking at that same hairstyle. So what we're going to do is we're going to run through each section, and then what I'd like to do is answer all the questions at the end of it, because I think it will be much easier that way. So client arrives with this image in her head. It's our job to sort that image out and place it in front of her so she knows that we're looking at the same haircut. It's our job, it's our skill, it's our superpower. It's also our job to say no, isn't it? How many times have we had a client who seems to be one of those butterflies? She floats from salon to salon to salon, and then she ends up in your chair. And she says, I've been to all the salons in the high street. They can't do what I want. And the reason, generally, is the stylist didn't have the confidence to say no. Trying to be nice, trying to give them what they want, when actually it may not be possible. Don't be scared to say no, guys. It's also the job for us to give her the alternatives. You can't say no and not give her the alternatives. I'm really, really sorry. I'm not sure that we're going to be able to manage that, and you're not going to be able to manage that at home. But what we can do is this. It's also our job to make sure that she can manage it at home, isn't it? To make sure she has the right products. To make sure she has the right tools and the right tips of the trade to make sure that she can manage it at home. Let me ask you a question. What's the definition of a great haircut? For me, the definition of a great haircut is it is as the client asked it to be, and that she can manage it for the life of that haircut. What's the life of a haircut? Well, it's what we give it. It's 4 weeks on a short little choppy number, or it might be 12 weeks on something that's a little bit long and bouncy and flowy. Now, most of this I've been saying she. I can just as well be saying he. Now, guys tend to be a little bit more literal in what they're asking for. The most intellectual, the most educated nuclear physicist scientist who's just saved the world becomes quite monosyllabic when they sit in your chair. I want 1/2 inch off the top and I want a 1.5 by the sides. That's it. Guys tend to be much more literal. They're much more visual in what they do and what they say and what they see with their haircut. A guy's haircut is not a short lady's haircut with sharp lines around the outside. We need to be a little bit more barber-like in how we work, how we think if we're going to compete in this competitive market and take these gents back. The really interesting thing that's going to happen is when guys start having longer hair and they perhaps have that Bradley Cooper sort of slicked back look, all these barbers are going to wonder what they're going to be doing. Now, Debbie's drilled this into us, hasn't she? We know their numbers. We know the difference between what happens with a 6-week client cycle and an 8-week cycle. I wonder if someone can actually type that and work out how many clients that we still need. How many clients do we need on a 6-week cycle? How many clients do we need on an 8-week cycle? Barbers are used to carving lines in to make sure their gent comes back every 2 weeks. What's going to happen when all these guys suddenly have 8-week appointments? They're all going to be sitting twiddling their thumbs, wondering where all their clients are. It's an opportunity for us hairdressers to start taking back some of these gents, taking back these men clients of ours. But we need to be more barber-like to be able to do that. Now, barbers carve lines into hairlines to make sure that they get neat shape, but it also grows out very, very quickly and brings them back sooner. Barbers go short. They don't faff around. They don't ask what clipper guard did you have last time? Was it a 2.5? Barbers do ears, they do nose hair, and they do eyebrows as a matter of service. There's no awkwardness. It just gets done. And we need to be doing exactly the same. So how do we do this? For me, the essence of the consultation is pictures, photographs. Pictures will get you the great haircut. It will get you the right haircut. Now, you do have a Pinterest board with men's haircut on your salon iPad and your phone, do you guys? You do have ladies' haircuts, colours, bobs, fringes, highlight techniques, all the different weaves, all those lovely balayage finishes. You have them all on your salon iPad on a Pinterest board all ready for your client. Please tell me you do. We do. We use our salon iPad in our consultation a large amount. How wonderful, how interactive, how personal is it for a client to work with you, to show you these photographs. We screenshot them, we put them in a folder with the client's name, and she comes back in and asks for the salon iPad. It's an amazing USP. It makes it much more personal, much more interactive with our clients. So a client brings you a photograph. Now personally, I like a client to bring 3 or 4. Generally, if a client brings 1 photograph, they want to be that person in that photograph. So let's get 3 or 4 so we know exactly the sort of feel of the haircut that we're getting. You're presented with this photograph. What do? I want you to describe exactly what's in that photograph. Let's not get technical. How many times do we know that that butterfly client has come into the salon and she's asked for a graduated bob? Isn't that the reason that she's been to all of these salons? Because she's asked for a graduated bob when actually she just wants an inverted bob. She wants it short at the back, coming down long to the sides. The hairdresser has given her a graduated bob. These funny layers at the back. That's what she asked for. Had that stylist presented her with a photograph from her Pinterest board sliding across all these bobs, she would have been able to see that actually she didn't want any layers in it. And just because a guy says he wants a 1.5 at the side, it doesn't mean that's all we do. So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at a series of photographs, and we're going to explain to our client, explain to the computer screen what you see. Try not to get technical. So the first photograph we have, is Brad Pitt. A sickeningly good-looking guy. Great film, by the way, The Fury. Bit gritty, bit war drama, but what a fabulous film. So, what I'd like from you is now talk to the computer, talk to the client, explain what you see on this photograph. Did you do it? Okay, for me, it's a high undercut. It's been shaved right up the top. It's been left really, really long and heavy through the top. He's blow dried it with some gel, and there's some heavy wax in there stopping that long floppy top hanging over. That's it. I know how to technically cut that. I don't need to tell the client how we do that. How did you get on? Did you say those sort of words, that sort of terminology, or did you get too technical? So let's look at picture number 2. 1.5 up the sides, 1/2 inch off the top, the client says. Let's look at this. Now, effectively, for me, this is the same haircut as the Brad Pitt one, except it's a little bit longer up towards the top of that undercut. And it's not as long and floppy because it's got a little bit more layers. It's a bit shorter through the top there. Now, if your client comes in and he wants a 1.5 up the sides and 1/2 inch off the top, and he's looking at this image, and you create this image, we're in trouble. We may well have lost that client because although we did a great haircut, it wasn't the right haircut. I'm hoping that you're starting to see the benefit of photographs in consultation. This can quite easily relate to ladies' haircuts as well. In fact, all of these techniques are going to be easily converted to ladies. So let's look at number 3. How do we describe number 3 to a client? Well, it's much shorter than the last 2. It's a little bit rounder at the sides. It's got lots of choppy texture through the top. So you're going to need at least some wax or some putty to get that there. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but as I'm talking, I'm starting to compare these photographs side by side because I'm going to use this Pinterest board. I'm going to use my News and Views book. How many of you guys remember News and Views books from 365? I think I've still got generation number 3 with me. And in there is a photograph from Alan Edwards winning the Colour Trophy in, I think, 1980. And I think it's a Veneto, which is Laurel 834 when they used to have numbers. It's still relevant today because I use it for the fringe. I use it for how the sides want to sit when I show the client a photograph. So this is a little bit rounder at the sides, but it's much, much shorter and choppier through there. And obviously we've got a little bit of the fade going on now. Picture number 4. Good old Zach. Another sickeningly good looking man. Every man hates this man. Have you seen him in Baywatch? Calm down there, Tommy. So let's explain this haircut to this client. It's got some weight at the sides, isn't it? It's longer here. But it's not actually as long as Brad's on top. But it looks like it's the longest haircut out of the ones that we've seen so far. Perhaps it's not even faded. How are we doing with your descriptions as these photographs are coming up, guys? Let me look at hopefully some conversation as we're working in here. Picture number 5. What's the description on this one? Well, I threw this one in as a little bit of a spanner because technically this is the same as the Zach. It may be a little bit shorter around the hairline, but it's still the same haircut. It's just been blow dried differently. So that when a client presents you with these 2 pictures and you say to them, is that the same? They don't quite understand that sometimes. It's our job to explain what we see in these photographs. I'm hoping that this is all making sense and worthwhile for you. Let's look at yet another sickeningly good looking man. Another very cool film, Public Enemies. Great outfits, great haircuts, and Tommy guns. Gangsters. Johnny Depp. Very, very cool man indeed. So cool that we have Keith Richards playing his dad in Pirates of the Caribbean. That's very cool. Although he's actually starting to look a little bit too much like Keith Richards himself at the moment. I think it's time to drop the eyeliner, don't you? So what do we see? Well, I see a bit of a combination of Zach and Brad here. We've got a high undercut. We've got it long and floppy at the sides, and yet we still have some shape and some taper towards the end at the top of that undercut there. So here we have some photographs. How did you guys get on with all of that? How helpful was that? So, Dec, have we got any questions based on what I hope was some slightly different way of looking at some consultation stuff.
No questions as of yet. Apologising to me, but none of yet.
Okay, cool. Well, let's hope that that means that everyone's on board, everyone's understanding what we're saying, and please, if you need any questions, if you want any clarification of anything, or you need anything from me, please ask away some questions, and let's have some fun.
Got a question from Andy.
So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to move on to the next section, which is something that's really, really very, very important for me. And this is, let me just move that over on my screen for 2 seconds. Now this is all about men's haircut and the balance of a man's haircut. Now without upsetting a million barbers, and there may well be some barbers on here, what I see from working in the salon and putting right a lot of haircuts that come back into me from barbers is that a lot of men's hair becomes unbalanced. And let me explain. Now, I'm not talking about some really wonderful barbers. There are some amazing barbers around, and I follow a lot of them on Instagram. And this also applies to the average hairdresser on the high street. Lots of work comes in and it's unbalanced. Point number one, I always find that it's too short at the crown. Why is this? Let me show you. Most barbers do scissor over comb. So they're working this way here, and they work this way here. Let me just turn that round. They work scissor over comb here. They don't see the profile shape as we do when we're working with our hands, which generally means that it becomes very, very unbalanced. Very rarely do I actually ever take off something at the crown after a barber's been with it. I do apologise, barbers. Point number two from unbalance, it's always too short at the sides. Why is that? Because they generally start with too short a clipper guard at the bottom and work their way up. Now, if my very, very dear friend from Wales, Tommy, comes over down to Essex, he won't just jump in his car and just turn up. He might end up in Romford instead of Rayleigh. He might end up in Brentwood instead of Billericay. God forbid he ends up in Basildon. He needs a destination. And our destination is going to be our guideline. That's the map where we start to clipper from. Somebody doesn't drive. Sorry, mate. Get on the bus. The train will do. Point number three. How a man's hair is unbalanced. It's generally too heavy on top. It's too long. Why? Because they've taken it too short at the sides. Now, I hope Daniel doesn't mind me sharing this. Deanna did a wonderful haircut at the Graduate Academy course on Daniel on day 3. Now, when we took our first guideline in, we didn't have to take anything off of that hair. Why? Because it had been cut too short 3 weeks prior. We used that as our guideline and we took it and faded it down from there. In converse, we actually then took 1.5 inches off the top of Daniel's hair and we heavily texturized it. What was the result? It didn't actually look any different, did it, Daniel? But a wonderful haircut she created with lots of beautiful balance in there. And I hope that Daniel will confirm that actually it grew out better because it hadn't been left too long on top. Now, just think, if we're doing a lady's short haircut, we don't just take the scissors and scissor over comb up from the nape with nowhere to go, do we? We wouldn't do that. So why do we do it on a guy with clippers? Now obviously I am generalising, but the idea is not to make those mistakes. It's the idea is for us to do what barbers do, but do it better because we're hairdressers. So for me, all about the balance is all about the section. Now I'm hoping that some of the graduates that are watching this are going to be able to say what the key aspect and the key section is that we did. Now for me, it's all about one thing. It's all about the horseshoe section. Now this is quite solid stuff. Now what I'd like you to remember is the shape of the horseshoe section will determine the shape of your haircut. How high or low you place it up the head will determine how short the haircut is. That's how important the horseshoe section is. Balance is getting them both right on the right head of hair. It's very difficult to show you on the block sometimes because actually the block has no shape. It's pretty averagely round. Whereas sometimes when you have someone with a high occipital or a very heavy occipital, the horseshoe section would be taken differently to suit that and to determine the shape of the haircut. So what we're going to do now is I've presented a few videos. We preset some videos so that we're going to work back to those haircuts. We're going to do Brad, we're going to do Zach, we're going to do Johnny Depp. And what I'd like to do is run through these videos now with you and just see the placement and the shape and the size of the horseshoe section, how it would determine different haircuts. So, Deck, can we have the first one? Now this is the first one, this is Brad. Do you press the button or do I, Deck?
Number 1, Brad Pitt. The resemblance is uncanny. We've taken the section high at the recession area to enable us to keep it nice and square on the front. Nice clean section all the way round. Quite low at the crown.
So, Brad Pitt. We know that it's quite square at the sides. So we would be able to just clip us straight up to the line of the disconnection where we've sectioned it off. Can we have video number 2, please, Deck?
So haircut number 2, pretty much the same starting point at the recession. As we move around, we're going to drop it down a little bit lower at the crown to maintain weight.
Almost the same haircut, but because we want it a little bit heavier, just at the top of that undercut, we've brought the horseshoe section down a little bit. When you bring the horseshoe section down, you're able to maintain weight much, much easier. Video number 3, please, young man.
So, haircut number 3. Although it's actually an overall shorter haircut, the balance is lower down. So we've taken the section lower down, lower than the recession area. And as you look, it's actually quite square all the way round. It doesn't dip towards the occipital like.
So how do we feel about the sectioning? Some slight deviations from those sections, how the shape will then determine the haircut. What we'll do once we've gone through these, I'll bring a block over and then we're going to just learn how to, or show you how to put a guideline in so that it becomes much, much easier to work the underneath, whether we're going to vertically layer and pull the hair out from that guideline or whether we're going to clip her up and work to that guideline. So could we have video number 4, please, Deck, from the Zach?
So you can tell by the uncanny resemblance that this is the Zach. full at the sides, lovely taper to it. So we have taken our section lower than the recession area again. As we work down, we will then taper it down towards the occipital to retain as much weight and again create that lovely taper.
Okay, so we don't need to do the next one because it's a bit of a cheat. Or did we do video number 5, please, Deck?
So
I think we did.
Cheat on this next haircut because it's exactly the same as the Zac Efron with added silver clip. Tapering down to the crown to retain weight. All we're going to do with this next haircut is take the top shorter.
And finally, super cool Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp, as you can see, just slightly lower than the recession area. Clean section all the way around. Just a slight dip at the crown to maintain
all the way around, just a slight dip at the crown to maintain some weight. Okay, so how did we feel? Did we glean anything from taking our sections in different ways to create? Remember the key, the shape of the horseshoe section will determine the shape of the haircut. How high or low you take that horseshoe section will determine how short the haircut is. So what I'd like to do is we're going to bring one of the blocks over. And now what I'm going to do, excuse the noise for a second, I'm going to bring the camera closer to so we can see what we're up to. Our guideline's been put in already. So what we need to do is, our section's been put in, not our guideline. Now we have 2 ways of putting in a guideline to enable us to have some sort of clipper work done or even some vertical layering working through. Now we know that a guy wants a 1.5 up the sides and he wants 1.5 inches off of the top. So what we can do is now we set this. Now how we've taken this section means that my comb follows that section. My fingers follow that comb. So now that shape is determined how the guideline that I put in follows suit. So the first way that we can take a guideline is take what we call a slither section at the very, very top of that section. A very, very small piece of hair. And what we would do is we would follow the guideline, follow the section. The comb follows the guideline. My fingers follow the comb. I have now this very, very small piece of hair here that's the right length. I can check it and make sure that it gives me the right shape and how the angle takes there. And I would work my way through all the way around, leaving about 1.5 inches at the back. Excuse the dogs in the background. The other way of taking the guideline and putting it in is one of my favourite techniques, and I'll show you why. Now this is a technique called block graduation. Now for some of us that are a similar age to me will know that this is a Tony and Guy technique developed by Anthony Mascola. You gather all of the hair up to the top of that section like so. We then control that section and then we would grip it. This is one of the only times that I tend to use tension on any hairdressing that I do. Now as I do that, what I'd like you to notice is that my finger at the bottom here is resting on the head to give me reference points for when I move around the head. That finger is always there. So as I lift, as I comb this and gather this all up and take this top section, the length that I decide here is the shape that I then create here. As I do that, and I gather that all up, we take that off. as I comb that back down again, what I want you to see is, if you've never seen this technique before, is that as you take that out, let me just clean that front hairline up so that's a little bit more visual for you. As you take that out, can you see that centimetre there is already at a 45-degree angle? Which then means my clippers with my largest guard will have a centimetre to blend into very, very quickly and very, very easily. If I comb that out, you may well be able to see that up against the wall there a little bit better. Let's move that back bit out of the way as well. So I now have a centimetre of guide rather than just the slither at the top of that section. So here we have the guideline. Here we have the section in determining the shape of the haircut, because I'm going to follow this round there all the way round, which then means I know that I can build up. If I take that section higher, I'm going to lose that weight there. So it's really, really key that you bring this section down and make sure that it is the right shape to create the haircut that you want. Now, Dec, can we very quickly post up that last picture that I sent you, the black and white one? I wonder if you can do that for me. Brilliant. Okay. Can everybody see that? Now, the reason I've put this photograph in here is because, as much as I quite like the shape, this is from a fantastic American hairdresser called Sam Villa. I'm sure many of you will know him. He's very, very highly associated with Paul Mitchell, or was. The reason that I've put this picture up is because it doesn't balance with me. The haircut itself will be a really, really nice haircut. But can you see that the horseshoe section is not following the haircut? Now, anyone who's not quite as experienced as this guy obviously is. Now, this was actually done clipper over comb with a big basin comb. But anyone that would follow that horseshoe section around the head is going to end up being very, very short at the back, and they're not going to be able to create that weight that we've just talked about. If you compare that, that's great, Dec. Can we get rid of that now? Fab. Let's move this over just a little bit. Can you see that? I don't know if we can see that better. That's better. So my section drops down, which means that I'm going to be able to follow it downwards there. So as I pull this section out here, it means that I maintain this weight here. If the section was too high up, I would end up going too short, the haircut would become too flat. So, in a nutshell, the sectioning that we take is going to give you the right guideline, which is going to make your life so much easier when you start to clipper up, or whether you vertically layer. Because actually the Zac Efron, it was almost a point where it might not well have been clippered because it was a longer haircut. So have we got any questions? Am I waffling too much?
Got quite a few questions.
Any questions so far?
Quite a few questions here now.
Fabulous.
Andy King's asked, what are your favourite clippers?
I currently use the Wild Senior. They're very, very heavy. They're a fabulous clipper, cordless when you want them, and you can still use them when they're in. The benefits is that you get half guards as well as the normal sets of guards in the whole set. Hope that helps, Andy.
We've got another question here from Steph. How would you best explain to a gent that he doesn't have the hair for the required style?
I think probably in exactly the same way as I would with a lady. I would be more conscious about what we can achieve rather than what we're not going to be able to achieve. It's always give them the alternatives. Let's always say that actually that's not going to be quite sufficient, it's not going to work, but this one will. I hope that helps.
Another one here from Jody.
Hi Jody.
Explain how to use a foil trimmer and is it suitable for all hair types?
It is, it's suitable for all hair types. Generally for me, and we'll go on to the clippering section after this, the foiling is almost the last thing that I would use. I'll explain that within the next section. So yes, foilers can be used on pretty much all hair. They can be used on curly hair such as Daniel's. They can be used on finer hair. Some guys are weird and they like it. For me, if I use the foiler on me, it's actually quite painful. It's almost like they're being plucked out one at a time. Ouch, ouch, ouch. So, next question.
Yeah, got another one. Tommy Brooks. Do you
Hi, Tommy.
Curly hair? He says, I tend to leave hair curly. Sorry, I tend to leave curly hair more blunt.
Yeah, definitely. There's lots of various different texturizing techniques. Generally, what you don't want to do is with curly hair, you don't want to make it too fine as it goes up towards the ends. That's what causes it to go fluffy. One of the first techniques I was ever taught many, many years ago by a fantastic hairdresser called Andreas at Allen International was how to castle and weave, which is actually taking out pieces of hair rather than texturize them, because then you have the same thickness all the way through the length of the hair. We did that on Daniel's, and I hope that he'll tell you that the curl stayed quite nicely, even though it was quite long on the top there. So I hope that helps, Tommy.
Steph has asked, do you have a preferred length of scissors on men's hair?
No, you find that most barbers use big scissors, but again, that's because they scissor over comb a huge amount. No, I use the same scissors on my gents as I do. I've got the Euphora 7-inch, which are a beautiful pair of scissors. I've got a pair of Yasakas, a 6-inch, and I tend to use them all the way round, like the edges and stuff like that. So no, I would be using whatever scissors. Because again, we're hairdressers, we're not barbers, but we need to think like a barber. We don't need necessarily to change our techniques, but we need to think about as a barber to be able to create the looks that men are after.
Do you horseshoe each subsequent part of the hair, of the head that you clip? Sorry, that's from Naomi.
Okay, Naomi, if I understand that, we put the one horseshoe in to start off. Now, generally, I work on my clients as they come in, as long as they have not a huge amount of product on their hair. My gent sits in the chair, and I then section it off. I then put my guideline in. I then do all of the clippering, tidy up all the way around the edges. I then shampoo my gent to get rid of all the hair. I then bring him back to the unit, check on my guideline before subsequent horseshoe sections on from the top box, bringing it down onto my guideline. Hope that helps.
And we've got one here from Marcus Collins. He wants to know, how long do your consultations and gents cuts take on average?
They're generally much quicker. Gents tend to be fairly monosyllabic. You know, they're quite literal in what they ask for. The idea of the photograph is just to literally clarify exactly how they want. And we now get a lot more gents bringing in a photograph because they're aware that actually we can nail it very, very quickly just by going, I want that. And then we can actually say to them, right, you can't have that, but you can do this. We're going to need to do this. You're going to need to have this sort of product. Photographs are also really, really helpful in being able to get the client using the right amount of product. It looks like that because they use this product or they style it like this. A lot of guys now blow dry their hair because they see, and we've explained the photographs to them so they know what they need to be doing. We've sold a fair few round brushes to a few guys that want some quiff going on. Hope that helps.
Michelle Daly has asked, how do you decide the length of that first guide?
Okay, so that's a really, really great question. By understanding what you're seeing in the photograph and looking at the balance of that, it will come through to how you look at the sides and the shape. Actually, let's work with a different block because there's more hair to cut off. I'm not sure, can we all see that? Am I close enough there? Let's move that down a little bit. That's a bit better. So when I'm looking at the hair, I've got to be really careful. This is the wrong way round. So this is the camera's reversed. It's really odd. Can you see just by using my comb, I can work out what sort of shape I want through the sides there. Once I've seen the photograph, I would know where my guideline, where my horseshoe section is. And you really want the horseshoe section to be probably only a centimetre or half an inch above where you want the guideline to be sitting. So as I pull that out, I'm going to be looking in the mirror. I'm going to be determining the length there to make sure that this shape is right for me. If I want more out, then I would have lowered the section, lowered the horseshoe section, or I could pull that out. And that would determine. Obviously, you can always take a little bit off, check that shape in there, and sort of like double check in the mirror first before we then start to then clip her up. I hope that that answers that question then, Michelle.
Looks like we've got one more question from this section. So would you start your guideline at each side of the head and meet in the middle?
Bailey, that's a really, really good question. Generally, it's about ease of section. Now, one thing I learned from Gianni, this is the smallest comb I own, and that's Gianni's fault. I normally use a carbon comb, and I always use a big comb, and I always use the big end of the comb, the open end of the comb. I very rarely ever use the closed part of the comb. I don't put a lot of tension in my work. But what I found is by using a much smaller comb, I can have a much cleaner section. And for me, it just flows better. I do apologise about the noise. It flows better to work that way because I can then come down to the shape that I want. If I start here, it just goes wrong. So for me, it's a much easier way to make sure I'm continuing on the shape of the head. I hope that helps there, Bailey.
I think we're all caught up on questions, guys, for this section. Is there any more questions for this particular section before we move on?
Fantastic. I hope that that's been really, really helpful, guys. Excuse me having a little bit of vimto. Got a sore throat now. So, let's talk about clippering. Let's talk about the fear of clippers, the dreaded fade. Now, hairdressers are generally scared of clippers. And the reason that they're scared of clippers, excuse me, I'm going to just pop up one quick thing on my screen before I carry on. The reason that hairdressers are scared of clippers. Oh, I've lost you. Hang on a minute. There we go. One, I think that it's because they're not introduced to clippers early enough in their hairdressing. And I would honestly urge every salon owner, every manager, every trainer to introduce their trainees to clippers as early on. Let's forget the big bouncy blow dries. They can already blow dry their hair. They can already blow dry long hair pretty much innately. But picking up a set of clippers is the most unnatural thing in the world for most trainees. Get them started right at the beginning. Let's get them used to having clippers in their hand. Not only will it improve and build their confidence for men's work, but it will also massively give them confidence on short-haired ladies' work, because clippers and men's hair teaches you angles. It teaches you sharpness. It teaches you to look at shapes when you're working with hair. So let's get them introduced to clipper work, because then they won't be scared of it. Now, the reasons that hairdressers are scared of clippers, one is because they don't use it to the degree that I do on a regular basis, so it's quite easy to lose your confidence. You know what's going to happen, don't you? You've got your 8 o'clock client comes in on a Saturday morning. He's 15 minutes late. He's got a Costas. He's been in the Costas queue 8 o'clock in the morning for a hangover. He hasn't bought me a coffee and I need one at 8 o'clock in the morning. I've now got 15 minutes less time to do my gen. And he decides that he's going on holiday next week. So he wants it a bit shorter. Can we go for a fade? I'm now running 10 minutes behind. He wants a fade. That's why people are unconfident. 2, you guys watch far too many videos on Instagram of people whizzing up with a foiler up to the temple area. Scares the life out of you. Don't do it. Now, I want to make this categorically, not all barbers fade upwards. I was taught to fade down, to clipper down from the highest grade down to the smallest guard. I hope that some of the graduates that I've worked with in the salons and the graduate at the academy will tell you that working down from the biggest guard down to the smallest guard makes life unbelievably easy, and you have full clipper control and you get shape. Now, Andy sent me a video on Instagram the other day of a fantastic barber called Fern the Barber, and he did a block and he did an absolutely to the bone foiler on this block. And about halfway through I was thinking, you've taken that too short. And actually I still think that the haircut, he did a beautiful job. The clippering is articulate, it's amazing, but it's too short. So the next point on why hairdressers are generally scared of their clippers is because when they were first training, the people they were learning on were their brother, their dad, and their boyfriend. God forbid he went wrong and you had to put up with them moaning for 6 weeks. Scary, scary stuff. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to just go back to some real basics, and I apologise to you experienced stylists out there. I want to talk about clippers in themselves, the physical being of clippers. 2 things should happen whenever you pick up a set of clippers. 1, I want you to check the clippers. I want to make sure that let's just go back to basics. So we have a base plate. Now you can see that the base plate is thicker at my palm than it is at the tip. That gives you a determinable length. We then have a cutting plate on top. So basically clippers are a lawnmower for the head. The cutting plate cuts anything that sticks through the base plate. Now, if I stick a guard on the bottom, it now makes that base plate thicker, which means the hair is longer. If I put an 8 on it, it's even bigger. The hair that goes through the cutting plate to be cut off is now longer. I can improve on that because I've also got a plate that extends, which means that the thicker part of my palm now means that it's shorter than when it's not extended. And that's our half. I hope that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn up my hands. This is basically the clipper action. Now what I want you to do is make sure that every time you pick up a clippers, you check on the cutting blade. Because if you put a set of clippers down too hard on the desk, the cutting blade might tip over the top and you may then well cut someone. As long as it's not, you won't cut anyone with clippers, so there's no need to be scared. Point 2, whenever you pick up a set of clippers, I want you to check that. And then I want to make sure that you check them every day and they're oiled. And when you oil them, put the oil across the blade, and then I want you to press on the blade like that when they're on, and it will push the hair out to the sides and keep it nice and clean. So you have oiled guards, and if I push that in very, very close, can you see that my clipper guards, my cutting blade is always behind the edge of the base plate? How do we use clippers? Now there is an action, there is a way of using clippers to ensure that you put as few lines and we can blend it as easily as possible. And it's called rolling out. It's called C-shape. It's called arcing. Or if you're a barber at Pro Hair Live, you rock it. You rock it out, baby. We've heard them all. And basically, we stand in front of the client and we will roll the clippers out towards our chin. How you hold the clippers is also massively important. If you hold the clippers like that, can you see what happened? Immediately, I had to stand to the side to make sure that was comfortable to start working. Look at my body position. That's not great hairdressing, is it? How can I see what I'm doing and blend over there? They need to be here, which now means that I have to hold them differently, like that. That's a nice, easy action for me to work my clippers. It's all in the wrist, baby. We roll out, we roll out. Now I'm going to use the whiteboard for this, actually. Let's do a little experiment. I've not used this before, I didn't practice this, but I watched Debbie on the whiteboard and I loved it. So, I need a colour. Ah, thank you. Why can't I get a colour?
If you look at the bottom of your screen, green box.
Sorry? Got it, right.
Green box. Click that green box and it'll bring up all your colours.
Yeah, got on the colours. Oh no!
What's wrong?
I can't. Am I doing anything on the screen?
There's a dot. Next to the green box, there's a little pointer icon.
Yeah.
If you click that, that'll bring up all your things. I think you want to be doing draw, do you?
Yeah, I do.
So select that and you'll be good to go.
No, got nothing. All right. Oh, that's a shame.
So you select the draw.
Ah, okay, here we go. No, not working for me, guys. Okay, that's a shame.
Oh.
Okay, never mind. So, what I wanted to draw was the head is round. It's got a curve to it. If you use the clippers really, really badly and you come up and you get scared and you pull out, you're going to put a line in it. So we roll the clippers. We roll the clippers. So what happens is they part nicely. They don't come up and part badly, putting a line in. I hope that makes sense. We'll work on that in just a moment. Oh, can I do that?
Try
no,
now.
there's still no good deck. I can't access that for some reason.
All right, okay.
No worries. Okay, so we have a rolling action. We arc the clippers out as we work through. And we are always going to put a guideline in, and we're always going to use our largest guard first to blend into the guideline. So let's say, for example, let's move, sorry about the noise, guys. So let's see that we've got our guideline. We're going to use our largest guard to be able to blend it into this guideline. Now we use that and we would always go in. It takes seconds to work out that a number 8 is too long, so we drop it and we put a number 6 in. If we were going to the Brad Pitt, we know that he wants it really, really sharp, right up to the line. We just pick the 1.5 and just whiz it straight up to the disconnection. But if we want some shape, we need to be able to create that. And working at the shortest point first, thinking we're going to come out just because we've got guards, is going to give you a little bit of a scary few moments. So what we're going to do here is we have a guideline in here from a previous haircut. So we are going to work with a 6. So our 6 goes in. Now when I'm working this, can you see how slowly I can work? Everyone seems to go up and out really, really quickly, and that's where you get into trouble. We go slowly, and we start low, low, higher, higher, higher. Now what I'm watching is I'm watching my cutting guard and I'm watching the guideline. I'm not worried about this. I'm worried about this line in here, the cutting blade. So as I work through, I'm going to work up, I'm going to work up, I'm going to work up, I'm going to work up until I can get there. Now you can see it barely takes anything off, so we now know that a 6 is too long. So let's go to a 4. And I start at the bottom straight away. I always start at the bottom. I never go in to try and find something that I want to take out. I start at the bottom and I work up to the point that I want to create, what I want to remove. Even now, so it's slowly. Just because you leave the clippers there, guys, it doesn't mean that it's going to be taking any more off. Can you see that that's already on its way out? It's towards my chin. Everything here for me, anyone that works with me knows it's all about a body position. This is comfortable. That is not comfortable, and it's also, I can't see what's going on over there. It's the same when you're cutting hair. If you're leaning over and that's really uncomfortable, but I want that angle, if it's uncomfortable, I'm going to relax. What's happened? The angle has changed. It's all about soft knees, it's all about chest height. You can't cut leaning in, you can't cut up here. It has to be relaxed, it has to be, and it's the same with clippering all the way through. So we've used the number 4. So let's work on number 4, nice and slowly. I've got my eye on the line, and I'm working up to that guideline now. Can you see it's coming out? Out it comes. Now for some strange reason, I always have a comb in my hand. And I always tend to sort of hold the guideline in place even if it doesn't move. It just seems to make sense to me. Now you can see the shape that we're starting to create. Now you can start to see why that guideline was really, really important. That was our number 4. So we go through to a number 3. Now my 3 will go to the number 4, not to the guideline. Starts at the bottom, it works its way out, it rolls out. It rolls out. I move around the head systematically and work my way out to the guideline. The guideline, the 8, the 6, the 4, the 3. I'm working my 3 into my 4. Let me find my number 2 that seems to have gone missing. It's amazing the difference between the 8 and the 6, or the 6 and the 4 and the 3 is pretty much the same. But when you start getting down into the lower guards, it seems to make so much more difference. Generally, that's still where people go up and out really quickly and they worry. You need to slowly move that arc, that roll out, ultra slowly. So there's my 2. It's barely touching. And I'm trying to blend my 2 into my 3. I'm not going to take that all the way up, because if I do that, I lose all of that taper. Can you start to see we're starting to build up some weight now by taking this away out slowly. In we go with a 1. Everyone starts to get worried when they start to get to a number 1. And again, it's slowly. What I would also like you to remember is that when you're looking at a guy's hair, and it's pronounced on the block even more, is that when you're looking at the guy, can you see how bad that line is on the edge? Partly because it's the block, but actually, because we're working up this way, that shape looking visually looks wrong. So what I like to make sure that we do is that we come in at the same angle here and work backwards so that it has a nice taper when the guy is looking at it from the front. There's not a harsh line. We want that to taper away from the front in the same way as that we want it to taper out this way. Nice and clean. Now, when we're starting to get into trouble with our blending, we've got another little tool up our belt. We have an extendable clipper. So we start to extend that. Can you see that blade moved? By extending the plate out, it means that we've got a slightly thicker base plate, which is our half. It's much easier to use the half to blend in. So from a 4, we would use a 3.5 to blend into the 3. We would use the 2.5 to blend our 2 into our 3. And when you get in shorter, you're really going to need the half to blend half into the 0, into the 1, and the 1.5 into the 2. That's how you're going to get that perfect taper, that perfect shape as we're working through. I'm going to just take off. Can you see using the comb all the way through there? Just want to get rid of that so you can just start to see that shape develop there through the back there. We're going to bring that block up just a little. That's better. Sometimes the block, you can never get rid of this little sticky out line, but we're going to have a go. So that was the 3, just straight away working that. And now we're going to work up and out and out. Can you see my clippers are not going up towards the guideline? I'm now using my lower guard and blending it into the previous guard, not... Because if I do that, I'm going to get rid of all that lovely shape there. Here's my number 1. Now I'm working quite quickly, but there's no need. But everything is done very slowly. The rolling out is really important. And if you go up too quick, you have to pull out. You can't roll. So please take your time and roll here, and work your way up into that there from there. Now, as the guys at the graduates and anyone that's used blocks when they're clippering, they look hideous. They really do. When you look at them straight on when you start to clipper, it looks awful. So what you're more interested in is that shape that you've created there, not the texture in there, because it's not real hair. So this is the half. And I've actually got a half on these clippers. This is why I like these Wild Seniors, because the half that I've got, I can also then extend just to blend that in, just that fraction more, all the way through. And there we have it. That's gone down to the 0. Now you can take the guard off and we can work even shorter. Can you see that I'm only blending in very quickly at the bottom there? The rollout is quite minute. but it's going to get you the shape that you're after. Got a bit of hair sticking out there, it's distorting that. Let's get rid of that. So there we have quite a sharp taper as that comes out. We haven't done that quite at the sides because I felt it was a little bit more visual at the back there, so you could see that shape a little bit better. So let's work, let's see what a 1.5 does into this side bit for you. The problem with working on the block is these ears. Who designed ears on a block? We're starting to see that shape there. Now, the other thing I want to make sure you guys know is, can you see where I've just taken that number 1 up a little bit higher? I've now got a little bit of discombobulation with my shape. You can come back up a guard. So just because I've gone in with a 1.5, it doesn't mean that I can't now put a bigger guard on to reblend as I've gone. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to work back into a 2. And I'm going to extend the 2 because I want to make sure that I get that blend back out. It's not touching it, so I can lose the half, and now I can blend that back out there, through there, and still build up my shape. That's better. Can you see that now? That's much, much better. I've taken that little bobble out that the 1 took. So, we have some taper, and we've done that by putting a guideline in. We've used our largest guard. We've then come down into a guard and there. And it's that rolling out action that makes a massive, massive difference. As you turn that round, can you see it's really quite a lovely shape which would build up on someone's occipital. Now, had I taken that section up too high, I wouldn't have been able to create that volume there and that length from there. So there we have some clippering work. I'm hoping that that's been very therapeutic for you guys that are all going to go and get your blocks out and they're all going to start clippering them all off. Please don't look directly at them. They look pretty awful. What I would like you to learn to do is look at the profile and the shape that you've created and that silhouette. And that's what we did at the Graduate Academy. We all stood there and we were all looking out the window at the outside edges of our blocks so that they could see what they were creating. I think that's pretty much it for me actually today as far as what I've got to present to you. I do hope that even the most experienced stylist has picked up something from me today. I hope that anyone that is a graduate stylist or in charge of the trainees thinks very, very seriously about how important working with clippers from day one. It's really important to build up their confidence, their client, their communication, their confidence with angles and shapes. They would see so much more, so much quicker that you'll develop, because what you see is what you do with a man's haircut. Have we got any questions based that I've missed while I've been waffling away like a lunatic?
We've got a couple of questions here, Rich. One from Alex Thomas. How long do you give yourself for a gent's haircut?
I'm quite a quick hairdresser, partly because of my age. And we were originally taught on 30-minute appointments, 45-minute appointments, and now I get the benefit of an hour appointment. I can normally do a gent very, very quick, very easily in half an hour. I like to take my time. A lot of the guys that I do now have become friends. So I take 45 minutes, but actually I can, at a push, I can do them in 20 minutes, half an hour. Part of that reason is because I do it dry. I put my guideline in, as long as they haven't got too much product on their hair. I can put my horseshoe section in, do my consultation, do my horseshoe section, do all the clipper work, get them shampooed, They get all the lovely service at the backwash. Who wants me to massage their head? They want someone else to do it. And then I can come back and then I can drop all my sections down on top of that guideline and carry on from there.
Another question from Steph. Would you blend around the ear, or do you follow the shape? Oh, sorry. When you blend around the ear, do you follow the shape of the ear, or work with the crown?
I'm gonna have to rework that question again. Say that again.
Oh, sorry, hang on, I've lost it now. Bear with me 1 second. When you work around the ear, do you follow the shape of the ear, or work towards the crown?
If I'm cutting around the ear, let me get this right. Steph, hang on, let me move the block and the camera again. So Steph, are we talking about here, around here? This for me is all about the blend there, and I always work upwards. If this was a real human, this ear would be flat right down there, bending it. It's made of plastic, and then I will be working my way up this way, not towards the crown. Everything for me is following the grain of the hair, and providing he hasn't got really bad hairline growth, then I would just work my way up in my normal sections, except for that bit through the front. Next question, please, Daniel-san. Declan-san.
One more. How would you use your horseshoe guide to cut the top?
Okay. Have we got time for this?
Yeah,
no problem. As long as we've got time, I will carry on. So, let's get rid of all of that hair. Oops, that's been dry a few days, so let me work with this. Now, let's say, for example, we're going to the Zac Efron. Let's do that one first. So we've created some taper through the sides there, haven't we? I'm now going to start at the crown because this is where I'm going to blend it. I generally always blend from the crown, and if I'm going to disconnect, it will disconnect as I work down towards the front. Let me see if that camera works a little bit better. Okay, so we now take exactly the same horseshoe section as the original section, but a little bit further up. And then we are going to drop our hair down onto the guideline. My biggest problem with the way that some of the trainees are taught now through top box, and this is, I'm going to digress slightly here, guys, I hope you don't mind. My question to any trainee is that when they're taught to take a top box and they bring this section up, how short do you take that? It's a guess, isn't it? It's an experienced guess. The longer I've done, I can guess that it's pretty much there. Because what happens is in college they're taught to do the sides and then they go straight to top box. And then they've got to try and sort out this really weird and wonderful corner. And that's what throws them. If we bring the hair down onto the guideline first, it creates a short point to short point on top eventually. So what we're going to do here is we are going to start at the crown. Now, can you see there is no tension there whatsoever? I've just combed it down. Slide your finger underneath onto the guideline, comb the hair over the top with no tension, and then just hold. And then we're going to take that off. Now I'm going to turn the client round slightly, and I'm going to follow it as the hair falls onto that guideline at a 45-degree angle there, and off that goes. Now if I want to then create a disconnection, an undercut, this is where the blend stops. So let's say, for example, this is my quiff. I'm now going to disconnect from the point of connection here down to that. And the longer that front is, the bigger the quiff will become. So as I move down to the sides now, I've got the blend here, and now what we're going to do is we're going to drop our finger down to disconnect. Can you see that? So as I cut that, I can then create all of the length that I want through the sides there. And now that's disconnected, but it's blended here, it's connected here. My next horseshoe section will do exactly the same, in exactly the same shape. I bring this down at the 45 onto the guideline. No tension, no weight. Turn my client round, I drop that down onto that section. It's going to connect at this point. This is now where I hold, actually let me turn that around for you again. As I come down, I have my connection here. Drop your finger down. This has stayed the same. This is moved, maintaining all that length and therefore that disconnection. That's how I would then blend that in. So now we are blended there, and yet we're not through the sides there, which gives us that. It also allows this to blend in really, really nicely through here. I hope that helps. Now, if we do that both sides, my point is that when you then take the top box, if you're going to take the top box traditionally this way, is that as I lift it up, I've got a short point, and I should have a short point from the other side. So it now determines short point to short point what I'm then going to take off through the top. Balance. Weight through the sides, so it's not too short, too long. It's going to have some shape. I hope that that really, really helps. The other thing I want to just sort of say to you guys, you know, I've been talking about the profile. Can you see how much wonderful weight that I've got through there? That's a really nice shape. Now I can use that as my guideline. Watch when I do this. I pull this up. I maintain that corner. Anyone that's worked with me knows that I keep things very, very square there. I want to maintain that, and I would cut that there. Look, there's my guideline through from my fringe. This is where the weight is. I will keep that corner. Right at the very end, if I feel it's too heavy, I can take that corner out just visually. But I maintain weight and I get a nicer shape there. Barbers don't do that because they stand here and scissor over comb this way. I hope that that is of some use there. That's how I use the horseshoe section and bring everything down to it and create my shape from there. Is there any more questions there, Dec?
We've got one more question. It's from Jodie, or Jodie 2, so it might be someone else using her link, so I'm not sure. But it says, can you experiment with different shapes in the hairline?
Yeah, all the time. You can work with your mini clippers. I'm not into the sketching and all of the different shapes, but yes, it's really, really simple. In ye olden days, we used to have the Boston, the square, the DA, lots of different looks that guys would, and they would tell you what they didn't want. Because we generally fade so quick, like so tight into the skin, there's not a lot of hairline to actually put some shapes in, but oh my God, yeah, like have some fun with it. Absolutely. So, that's us done, I believe. Thank you very, very much for giving up your time for me. I do appreciate how valuable time is. I really hope that this has been a benefit, whatever stage in your career has been. And please get in touch with Passion for Hair if I can bore you silly for another hour and a half. Anything else, please contact us and we can help out.
Yeah.
Any guys that really want to make sure that their graduates and their trainees are ready to take on clients in the salon and feel confident about it, we have a really wonderful graduate program specifically designed for this, to give them, to learn from the mistakes of others. And most of those mistakes have been made multiple times by me, of course. So thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks very much. Thanks for joining this morning. Really good session this morning, Richard. I just want to remind everyone that tomorrow we have Debbie's Business Bites at 11 a.m. That's every Wednesday. Thursday we've got Jude's Q&A following on Census's webinar. We have, of course, got Census's webinars running as normal. On this Friday we've got a new one coming up, which is before 8 steps with Nicole Chilmay. Next week we've got Andy coming back to do a part 2 on his razoring, as well as Debbie and Jude. And next Thursday, Daniel was doing a H.H. Jimerson webinar for us. Also, next Monday and the Monday after, the 2 Mondays coming up, Euphora have opened up their Vision Quest. They're doing their Vision Quest online. So they've opened up the sign up for that. So anyone that hasn't been to Vision Quest or hasn't managed to go over to America and view some of Euphoria's education, that's a great way to have a look at their content and connect with them. All the links will be up this afternoon, guys. So keep an eye out on that for P4H Stylist Hotline. You'll be able to sign up for all the things coming up. Hope we don't miss you guys. So thanks for joining us this morning. It's been a really good session. And we'll see some of you tomorrow, I'm sure. Thanks once again, Richard.
No problem. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, guys. See you later. Bye.